John with Two Moose Home Inspections, and one of the things that we've been doing at Two Moose Home Inspections is in-service training. And so our in-service training, we cover a lot of topics. We do it monthly, and that way myself and my other inspectors able to take a look at everything that we did, things that were funny, things that we almost missed, things that are a really big deal that we want to make sure everybody is also very much aware and that it's in the forefront of their minds. So what we do is we come together, we have an in-service training, and we just make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on in the business and what's going on as far as home inspecting is concerned. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you more than likely don't work for Two Moose Home Inspections. And if you do, then this is a great resource for you to go back on. But the reason we're doing this is twofold. One reason is because I, as a business owner, want to make sure that I have record and documentation of the things that we've covered and gone over. Additionally, that will help me with continuing education and moving things forward with the business and new employees. It kind of gives everybody a baseline so we all get caught up at the same speed. Additionally, I'll forget the majority of the things that we go over month to month, and I in fact have forgotten the majority of things that we go over month to month. And so I've decided that it's not that much extra work to just record what we went over, and the video is going to be very raw, very just me talking to the camera and scrolling through what we go over in our training. But if you can glean a little bit of information from it, then I hope that that helps you. And without further ado, let's take a look and see what we have to go over. And right before we do, I guess most of you, especially if you are the realtors that use this pretty frequently, you probably are very much aware that we have a new employee. His name is Shay. If you go to YouTube, you can check out, or our website, you can check out his introduction video. And yeah, it's good having multiple inspectors and definitely helps with the workload. So let's take a look here. What we have going on is at Two Moose Home Inspections, like I said, I am very much all about having things neat and organized and continuing with good training and good education in addition to what our certifications require us to have. So if we come down here, you can see we're already building out November's training. October is the first one that I actually documented. So we're just going to continue that trend and we're just going to ignore what we forgot over the past couple of years, but whatever, it happens. So moving on, October 2020, that's what we're working on. So we're just going to go through all this kind of stuff. That way I have a record, and let's take a look. So safety, hantavirus. So hantavirus is what you find in mouse poop. And so hantavirus, if it goes up into the air and you breathe it in, is extremely dangerous to you. And the reason it's so dangerous is because if you contract hantavirus, then you have a 40% chance of death. That's the outcome, 40% chance of death. Now, right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that is a 2% chance of death. And so I just make sure that my inspectors are very, very safe, because if we go into an area and there's a bunch of mouse poop, we're going to say the same outcome. Get a pest control pro, have them clean up the mouse poop. Whether I put on my Tyvek suit, face mask, respirator, with the glass and everything, and I crawl on my hands and knees and belly all through all this mouse poop, and I bring it up into the air, and then I bring it home to my family. In the report, the outcome is still the same. Pest control pro, and have them clean up all the mouse poop, because you as a homeowner shouldn't clean up the mouse poop. So that's hantavirus. Ladders and roofs, we just talked about how we properly set up ladders, how we properly get onto roofs. Electricity, just a lot of different things about electricity and how to stay safe with electricity. And then confined spaces, making sure that if you don't feel comfortable as an inspector going into an attic or into a crawl space, if you think you might get stuck, don't do it. Just don't do it. We have 360 cameras on poles. Stick the camera into the hole, get that where it needs to go. That's all we need to do. Super basic, super simple. So updates. What we have is we have new marketing swag in the mail, business cards, bags. We also have now 6 radon detectors with new labels on them, new equipment for the sewer scope bag, like water removal, seals, shims, etc. New supplies. We have blunt, fine threaded screws, so that way if we get to a electrical service panel that doesn't have a cover, then we can get that taken care of. The radon detectors, that's a huge investment. Each one of those radon detectors is about $1,500. So to have 6 new ones is a little crazy. But as the business grows, there's more need. And then also every year, each one of those has to be recertified, recalibrated to make sure it's within the range that it's supposed to be. And that's like $150 per detector per year. So it gets a little up there, which is fine. The other thing we got was, like I said, the marketing swag. You can see it in the photos here, that we got for our realtors that, do a lot for us. We got them this right here, which is just, and if you're watching, I'm sorry, you now know what you got. We got them bags that have a zipper on the top, other small bag inside, and then so you can put all like your cell phone or chapstick or whatever it is that goes in there. So we got them everybody a bag just like this. And then inside of that bag, we have 10 bags that we put in just for getting groceries and other things like that. So each one of those bags has 10 shopping bags in it. And those shopping bags are recycled cotton. Everything's recycled cotton. So we don't have to worry about, how we feel about our impact as a company. And I feel good that anything that we provide as a gift for the upcoming holidays is something that we can provide with a good conscience. And that's important to me. So moving down, we talked about report writing. So creating new events for like radon pickup, water samples, stuff like that. Sewer scope, putting it mostly as a pass and fail. I think that there's been some, not misunderstanding, but just concern of, okay, did this pass or is the sewer scope no longer good to go? And so we just want to make sure that everything's the way that it should be. Yes, your sewer scope passed. However, here are the issues that we have going on. Keep an eye on it. Or your sewer scope failed. We're going to need to call somebody and we need to get it fixed soon or immediately. So that's an important thing. Then we move down to adding into Notion, which is the program we're using right now, to make sure we keep up to date with our continuing education, just to put things in. So we are right now at the very beginning here for the plumbing, water heater, this, that, the other. So I'm just going to go through these rapid fire. If you're an inspector, you probably know what it is that we're looking at. If you're a homeowner, you may not, but that's why you should give us a call, schedule a home inspection, or if you just want to chat, give us a call too. That's cool. So here's what we have. Water heater, temperature pressure relief valve is leaking. So you can see, obviously, there's a leak. Now, that might just mean the temperature pressure relief valve is no longer any good. It could mean that we don't have a proper expansion tank. It could mean that we have a lot of other things that are going on inside the system that are, less than ideal. We just want to have it taken a look at. So then this one here, a humidifier was just not plugged in. So we want to get that plugged in. Right now in our area, there's a bunch of freezing cold weather coming our way. We actually now have a big snowfall and we have snow staying on the ground. And I mean, it's pretty typical for our area. Where we're at right now is at 10,000, well, almost 10,000, about 9,500 vertical feet is where we're at right here. And so we get snow pretty regularly and pretty intensely. And so our winter season is here, so we just want to make sure that whenever our inspectors go out, that they are looking to make sure that the irrigation is properly winterized. And what do we do to do that? Nothing. That is beyond the scope of the inspection. All that we're saying is pretty please make sure that this has been winterized. Inquire with the seller. Make sure that it has been. And as you, as a homeowner, you want to make sure you're winterizing it every single winter before it starts to freeze. So then ceiling damage, moisture inactive. This one was really strange. So there was a vent coming out, a plumbing exhaust vent, and there was water and all kinds of damage, which you could see that is just totally damaged the ceiling. But there was no damage between the roof and that first floor. It was only down the lower floor. And with looking at the thermal camera, it looks like that leak is following down that pipe. And whenever that pipe turns to the right, that the water is falling off of that pipe and causing damage to the ceiling. So we got that all written up. Exterior grounds. This particular house was in a floodplain area. And if we are, as an inspector, we want to make sure, are you getting the proper insurance? Are you aware that in a case of a 100-year flood, which doesn't mean every 100 years you're going to have that flood, it means that is the likelihood of that occurring. And recently, the occurrence has been greater and greater and greater. So we want to make sure that if you are near water, if you are in a floodplain and it's highly visible to us as an inspector, we want to make sure that you're covered. Then we have aluminum wiring, single strand. So aluminum wiring is a really good cause for a really good way to catch your house on fire. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that it is using the proper, and you can see down here, it's using the proper type of connections. And if we see aluminum wiring, we really want to make sure that that the homeowner is very much aware, because sometimes houses with aluminum wiring have a difficult time getting insurance and other things along those lines. Now, the aluminum wiring can be corrected. It just has to be done correctly. And a lot of people that do electrical work don't necessarily know what the rules and regulations are behind copper wiring. And so whoever it is, you want to make sure that they are competent and that they know exactly what it is that they're doing or what they should be doing. So then as we move down, shower handle loose. This whole door was actually loose and there was no, it was not at all connected to the bathtub. So little things like that we find. And that was just kind of an amusing thing to have found. This one here, your service panel, you want the hot tub GFCI breaker to be present. There was none. So just imagine a GFCI is basically saying, I'm going to give you electricity. You're going to give me electricity back. I'm going to give you electricity. You're going to give me electricity back. As soon as that agreement, that circuit is broken, the GFCI cuts it off and prevents you from getting electrocuted, which is what we're looking for. And so obviously for a hot tub where there's a lot of water and a lot of electricity, moving those pumps, we really, really, really want to make sure that that is taken care of with a proper GFCI within the proper distance from the hot tub as well. So then this house, oh my gosh. So whenever I see steam coming up off the water, I'm always interested to see how hot it is. This water was 149.9 degrees. Yeah, 149.9. That is insane. That is so hot. Within a second of contact, you can have a 3rd degree burned. And so what did we have to do? In this house, I normally don't intervene, but on this house, I went over to the hot water heater. I turned it from very hot down. It's like A, B, C, very hot. I turned it down to A and then drained the water. And then now we should have a safe level of water. It was an easy turn of the knob to prevent somebody from getting injured. A lot of times we'll interject. We aren't supposed to, but if I can prevent somebody from getting injured, I'm going to do what I can to prevent somebody from getting injured. So moving on to the next thing, speaking about injury, this one here is gas that is uncapped and it's an abandoned termination. If anybody turns one of those valves, the entire house fills up with natural gas and then explodes like what's in the movie, in the movies. So anyway, we just want to make sure that those have caps on them. So if somebody does accidentally open up the valve, the gas has nowhere to go and everybody's going to be okay. So then this house had the worst roof that I had ever seen. You can kind of see from some of these pictures, the main thing is where the two pieces of metal come together, there's kind of like a hole at the very top of the roof. They never put a cover over top of this hole. Therefore, the roof is doing nothing, literally nothing. And there were so many issues ongoing. It's just by far the worst roof worst roof installation, I should say, that I've ever witnessed. And it was a pretty recent build. The next interesting thing is that there was a wire. Now, the wire here was not terminated properly. So what happens is that going to your dryer, we have 4 wires in modern wiring. We have a hot, a neutral, and a ground. So hot, neutral, ground. And that's if you want to do a 240 volt. And what you can see that's circled in one of these photos right here is that you can do 120 volt, or you can do 240 volts. Now, the way that they had this wired up is that those wires were connected inside of the dryer. So we have hot, and those are connected inside the dryer. Whenever you turn the dryer on, they become connected. And so what happened is that in the service panel, there was one wire that was at the end of this that wasn't plugged in. Normally the power comes in this way and it goes to the dryer. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that by turning on the dryer, we've now electrified the end of this. Thank goodness. I could have been knocked on my butt so hard, realistically gone to the hospital, if that service panel had made contact with that wire, because at the time I was actually running the dryer. Scary. So anyway, be safe around electricity. And also, just because you don't think that electricity is going into it, you have to remember what's at the end of that wire and that electricity can be going back. This is a very common thing that we see pretty frequently. So just something to be aware of. So then moving on, this one here, how many manufacturers did this have? So this panel was made by Simmons, and the breakers were made by Square D, Eaton, Cutler Hammer, Westinghouse, and of course, Simmons. We had 5 different manufacturers inside of that service panel. Could it work? Yeah, sure, yeah. Could totally work. It was working. Just, it's not ideal. You want to make sure that everything is listed. Every listed electrical thing is designed to work a certain way with certain components and whatever. If you are using other manufacturers, they may not have been tested to work together appropriately. And we just want to be very careful with that. This shower, horrendous. Basically, they put a corrugated steel inside of that shower. Now, the problem, aside from using screws that did not have rubber gaskets to prevent water intrusion, aside from not putting sealant around any penetration, such as the handle to operate the shower, aside from all of that kind of stuff, the real problem was that you have these effectively tubes, because you have the flat wall, then you have the corrugation. So what that creates is a tube. And you have these tubes that just run all the way up the wall, which means humidity levels behind that steel are going to be much, much higher because it was not sealed around the bottom, which it should not have been sealed around the bottom because we need water to go out. But basically, this is just asking for mold. So it looks cool, but just asking for mold. Man, this was a gorgeous, gorgeous structure, except that it was failing. And so that's bad. basically what we have is that main rim joist was peeling off like this, and the whole deck was about to fall over. Not ideal, not safe to walk on, not safe to be on. Here's a few photos of that. And basically, if you got what's called knee bracing, which is that 45-degree angle where you have the top of the deck, the post, and then right here would be that knee bracing. If you have that, then you're good to go. And you could, prevent what's happening from happening. However, there's some other issues going on, so just, anyway, get an expert on that. We also had venting into the interior crawl space. So the fan inside of the bathroom to take all that hot, humid, moist air up and then out was actually going down into the crawl space. Less than ideal. Don't want that to happen. This sink here, interesting story. So I turn on the sink. Everything's looking fine. I look underneath and it's just leaking. And that leak is happening underneath the sink. And it is coming from what I found, the valve underneath the sink. And so then what do you do if whenever you turn it off, it's still leaking? Well, you turn off the other supply lines. So the other supply lines were turned off. However, those valves both failed. And so now I have a leak coming from the valves and whatnot. And yeah, it's just not great. It was not great. But we got everything with a sponge all cleaned up, contacted the listing agent. They got a person out there to get it repaired. Not super quickly, but it at least was taken care of. And this had been an ongoing issue. So the damage that was already there was already there. But there are certain valves that we see underneath sinks, and we do not operate those valves because those valves have a high likelihood of failing. Case in point, they failed. So just something to be aware of. So then next, I don't know who installed this toilet. What a joke. The whole toilet was moving, which means the wax ring is getting squished, which means that any of the things that you flush down the toilet could then go into the subfloor, and that's a problem. So what we have going on is that they also, I don't know how or why, but the one screw that you can see here, they screwed that in upside down. That is not the way that it's supposed to be screwed in for anything. And sometimes the DIY projects are not so great. So anyway, this roof covering here, shingles missing, whatever it may be. When I went up onto this roof, actually before I went up on the roof, I had the 360 camera and I was getting this glare and I'm like, I don't like the way this looks. So what did we do? In that particular case, it was, hey, I want to make sure that we're getting things taken care of properly. So what we did is we just went up onto the roof, then looked with our eyes because you couldn't see everything from the way the structure was set up. And there you go. Huge roof problem. Glad we got it taken care of. This here, this is called a sewage ejector or a lift station. It basically takes all of the stuff that you flush down a toilet and then raises it up so that way it can then go out with the rest of the plumbing. So the problem with this is that it was leaking because it's constantly holding on to water. And the leak was very, very bad. Slow enough that it wasn't super noticeable, but there was just mold everywhere and filth and smell and ugh. Anyway, that's a thing. This range almost killed me, so that's neat. Touched the knob to turn it on. Huge white arc just spark right out from there. Not safe, not ideal. So anyway, this range and oven should be replaced is what it comes down to. This interior window was actually at Copper Mountain on the 4th floor, and at Copper Mountain, right near center circle, this window opened up so much that I could like almost stand up straight and walk right out of the window. There needs to be some kind of protection for children or for somebody that may not be in the best mental state and they just need a couple seconds to have them change their mindset enough to either call for help or not do something that could very much hurt them. And so windows like this, we are very safety conscious. I tell people I look at the world in 3 different ways or 3 different viewpoints. One is as a raindrop. If I was a raindrop, where would I want to go? And then that helps us to identify if water protection is adequate or if things are just working the way they should as far as preventing water intrusion. The second thing I think of myself as is a grandparent. And if I'm, grandpa and I am standing at the top of these stairs, do I feel safe going down the stairs? Are the handrails good? Are the spacing of the stairs appropriate? And so I think of myself then as grandpa. And the other thing I think of is as a 6-year-old version of myself. And I pushed on everything. I moved everything. I jumped on everything. And having a window that's open like this, as a small child, if you push on the screen could give way, and that's very unsafe, which is why we call things like this out. And although it's not necessarily a requirement, it's something that if it's predictable, it's preventable. So if I can predict that it's going to happen, I want to prevent it from happening. So that's why we put things like this into our reports. So then the next thing is high humidity levels damaging this door. Just get a properly vented vent. Normally you see a lot of cracks in wood, and that's normal and that's natural and that's the way that it should be. However, on this particular crack, it was very much ready to just peel off. And if that was the case, that would be very detrimental for the structure of this beautiful log cabin. So that ended up getting called out. But please, just because you see a crack doesn't mean that the world is ending. So please don't be too afraid of cracks. So then log cabin. So here's the interesting thing. Right here it says using a pencil to trace a stain will allow the owner to visually identify the stain and visually identify if the stain is pushing further. And so basically if in a wooden area, because on a log cabin they never forget, if you have a leak, draw around it with a pencil very lightly and then wait for the next rainstorm, wait for the next season, wait for whatever. And if that stain grows past the pencil lines, then you know that you still have an active leak or it was a leak from the past. So let's take a look here. We got oxygen permeable tubing. Ugh, this is the bane of my existence right here. Okay, so basically if it doesn't say DIN 4726, then basically normally, and gray is normally the color, what this means is that it's an oxygen permeable pipe. And so whenever you have baseboard heating, whenever you have, any of these things going on, baseboard water heated or radiant floor heating or whatever, the boiler is normally a ferrous metal. And what that means is that it can rust. And so we would want that to either be stainless steel if we have oxygen permeable piping, or we want to have a stainless steel heat exchanger so that way these two systems don't interact. But basically what's happening is oxygen is coming into the system, and then that oxygen is oxidizing and causing corrosion, and that can cause a bunch of issues, and it's very expensive to repair and just not great. And so with this oxygen permeable tubing, please make sure that if you do have any type of tubing, it should be PEX. If it's PEX, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's oxygen impermeable, but if it says again that DIN 4726, then you're golden and you don't have anything to worry about. So basically then we talked about cancellation policies and whatnot. For this particular property, on 2 separate occasions, we had to cancel this particular inspection, and we had already been out to the house both times and we were trying to be nice, but quite frankly, I had an inspector put in almost 4 hours of driving just to do nothing and not get paid. And so we basically have changed our policies that say, hey, if we've already dropped off equipment, you're going to pay a bare minimum amount of money, and we have that listed in our agreement. And then if it's less than 24 hours, we could have filled that with somebody else who needed the home inspection. And so a set amount of money also will not be returned. It's nothing crazy, but it's, like $100 or $200, depending on how much effort we've put into it. It's bad that they didn't get lending, and that hurts. And I feel sorry for them. But it's also bad that my inspector wasn't able to spend time with his family, wasn't able to make money, and in fact lost money with gas. And that's also hard on us. So that's why we have this in our training, just to make sure everybody's aware of the change of the policy. So floor, soft movement. This basically comes down to, this one here. From a condo, they had it like the water going out into a drip pan, which not great idea. Then they had it plumbed. Here we go, like plumbed, but not even plumbed. It looked like somebody put a screwdriver through the drip pan and then broke it all apart. And then hopefully water goes into this totally corroded cast iron pipe. And it was just not ideal. So what happened was the floor was damaged. And with the thermal, we could see that there was an expansion of the floor, which left an airspace in between there. It could be wet, could not be wet. We aren't 100% sure. But basically just really, really bad design, because if the condo above you, if their temperature pressure relief valve releases and all that water comes down and floods your apartment, there's no way to trace back to them that it was their fault. And therefore you could have a huge bill. And that's not ideal. That's really not ideal. So anyway, next thing, receptacle, trip inadequate. So this tripped in 360 milliseconds. Remember I said if I give you electricity, you give me electricity back, and we keep that going. If you don't give me electricity back, I have less than 200 milliseconds to stop you, so that way you don't get hurt. And so this was 360 milliseconds on this GFCI, just get it fixed. So we just talked about this multiple issues on the water heater. So much lint inside of this dryer vent. So we want to make sure we get the lint out of there. The run is 25 feet. So people have like all these kinks and all this other kind of stuff. For every 90-degree turn, so if you come in 90 degrees, you lose 5 feet. So if you come out of the back 90 degrees, you come up to the top, another 90 degrees. That's 10 feet that you just lost. You then make another turn or another turn, you could be at 0 feet total distance. But basically, you just have to be very mindful of where your laundry stuff is going. Clean out your ductwork, sorry. Clean out your lint trap, make sure we're good to go. I was pulling out just handfuls of this dryer lint. And if that caught on fire, your house is done for. Sometimes they don't adequately install baffles. That's just a thing that happens. And we want to make sure we have good airflow coming up and into the attic to make sure we don't get ice dams and other things like that. I think that an inspector came by that works for the county that is a code enforcer and said, hey, you don't have any baffles in there. They're like, okay, I'm going to put some baffles in. They just throw it in there and they aren't doing anything that they're supposed to be doing right now. Those baffles, they are not working as intended. So this here, we had a house where the floor basically had sunk. So this floor had sunk because on the outside, we had an area where all the ground just kind of went down up against the foundation. And I think that during the snow melt and runoff, that basically caused some movement of dirt and soils underneath the house. And that is expensive to repair. If it is repairable, everything's repairable, but if it's repairable. So that's that. 6 feet. So we just want to make sure our GFCI receptacles are within 6 feet of water. Now, the thing is, what are the rules? Well, the rules change all the time. Am I grandfathered in? Yes, you're grandfathered in. It doesn't matter, whatever. What I'm saying is if it's predictable, it's preventable. Put yourself in the mindset of grandpa and he is working with his electric shaver and he drops the electric shaver and goes to grab it and it's in water and he gets shocked. Put yourself in the mindset of a little kid and little kid's playing with an outlet near water. Something goes in, he grabs it, gets shocked. The main thing is if you get shocked, you can tell somebody. If you get electrocuted, you can't tell anybody because you're dead. So, does it matter that the code says, oh, well, only in kitchen areas? No, I'm not a code enforcer. I don't care. If it's predictable, it's preventable. So I'm going to tell you, spend the $15. If you're buying a house, you should have $15. Spend $15, put in a GFCI. Whew. All right, I'm going to get off my podium. My apologies. I get a little worked up about electricity sometimes. All right, plumbing drainage. This was the worst house I've ever seen. Ever. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. We had angles. We had, oh my gosh, nothing was supported. The angles were insane. I'm sorry, I get excited sometimes because I really enjoy home inspecting. Wow. Terrible, but wow. But okay, so what do we do? All right, for me, if this was my house, there was so much space in that crawl space. So easy to work around. Okay, I have a toilet here. I have a sink here. I have a bathtub here. So what do? If you ever play with an erector set, you just put it together. And then once it's all put together, you then glue it and put it together and you're good to go. Anybody can get this done. A plumber can get it done a lot faster. But I, as just a novice, could probably replumb this entire area maybe in a day and a half maximum. It's not that big of a deal. And the expenses aren't that huge. So people will lose their mind and will be like, oh my God, John, I don't know what to do. Like, this is insane. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, great, cool. A person built it wrong and a person can fix it correctly. And so anything that we find in a house, I just want you to be aware of it so that way you know what's going on, and that's good enough for me. So next we have water damage coming from a condo up above. So we just want to make sure, does the HOA cover that? Do you cover that? Does the person up above cover that? We just want to make sure. Also, I don't want to say the words, it's unlawful, but you can't just convert a garage into a living space. That's not okay. It's just not okay. There are certain things you can do to make that happen, but like if you still leave the spigot in there and you try to make it a bedroom and nobody, not even like Toto the dog, can get out of the window once it's opened and you push them, like if nobody can get out of the window, it's not a bedroom and you can't sell it as, well, clearly you can sell it as it being a bedroom, but pretty please, if you are going to modify your house and modify living spaces, get a permit, do it correctly. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of grief whenever an inspector finds that you converted a garage, not going to say unlawfully, incorrectly. So the main reason, again, predictable, preventable. We want to keep people safe. And if we're putting somebody inside of a garage space, do we have proper fire barrier separation? Do we have separation from gases and other things like that? There's so much that goes into it. I'm talking too much. Let's keep moving. All right. So insulation, sometimes insulation can be packed down. Sometimes it can be not there at all. And everybody freaks out about, oh, well, it's going to cost me so much money. No, it's not going to cost you so much money. Don't worry about it. If you are getting your groceries and you leave the door open one time while you go out to your car and then come back, you may have lost more energy than this insulation will lose you in the course of a season. So just put everything in perspective. Keep it in mind. All right. Square D, they had a recall, and they had a recall on these AFCI breakers. And if they have blue on them, then they could be recalled. But in order to get that, you have to take the breaker all the way out, take a look at the back of it, and then put it back in. That goes a little bit beyond the scope of a home inspection. So my recommendation is just have an electrician come and do that work for you, because you don't want to get it electrocuted. Electrocution is bad, but we also want to make sure we have the proper stuff in there. So if you see the blue on a Square D, let's get it taken care of. So interior floor, uneven surface. Yeah, it was. Holy cow, super uneven. So if we come just a little bit further down here, basically everything, it was these pictures here. I don't know if you can see the cursor or not, but basically they had logs, they had rubble, they had all these things holding the house up and together, which makes perfect sense as to why the surface failed. So that's not great. The bathtub, they put the pipes together. Remember I told you to redo the plumbing, put the pipes together, and then take them apart, glue them, or in this case, just screw them tight. They didn't do any of that. Water came out all over the place. Such is life. It's good to know about it ahead of time. Sad story, very sad story. There was a bird, and I always tell people, put a metal mesh screen on your penetrations that come out of your house. So that way wildlife doesn't get into it, like birds and squirrels and other things like that. I just kind of say these things because it could happen. I open up this furnace, and this bird like falls down almost onto me, scared the crap out of me. And my heart rate was through the roof, immediately sweating because I was wearing a big puffy jacket because it was a cold day. But, you know, just protect wildlife. Please, we have an obligation. Just protect wildlife. If you know that your home can do harm, do whatever you can to make sure your home doesn't do harm. That's all there is to it. So moving on, if you have a drainage pipe in the plains at 8,000 vertical feet, you don't want it to be exposed to air, because then all of the stuff you flush down the toilet will freeze, and then you'll keep flushing down the toilet and it'll just come back to you, which is not ideal. So then if something's supposed to be buried under the ground, we want to make sure that it's buried under the ground. So this is a polyethylene coated copper pipe. It should be buried. That would be ideal. So then we had a supply well test failure. So we just want to make sure that, you know, your house is able to produce enough water. Really interesting. This was an award-winning home. And I think that it was because the HOA limited the amount of water that is allowed to be used, because water rights in Colorado are extreme. So interior stair. This was a beautiful staircase. However, put yourself in the mindset of a child or as a grandparent. Could a child fall off of these stairs? The answer is yes. So do I need to put something there? The answer is yeah, you probably should. So, but do you? I don't know. It's so beautiful. Do you need to? I mean, if you're watching this, probably you and I have grown up in some very either dangerous houses or friends that had dangerous houses, just because those were the times. And man, this staircase was beautiful, but also not safe. So electrical wiring. This was interesting. So basically they used this frost tech. They took off the outer sheathing of it, which is basically the grounding wire to make sure nobody gets electrocuted. They then put it down their supply line all the way back to the pump, because the water wasn't buried deep enough below the frost line and it could freeze. And so I don't know if this particular product with its rubber sheathing or plastic sheathing had BPA or any other toxins that could be released into your drinking water. It's definitely not designed for what it was being used for. Really intelligent way to fix the issue. But the main issue is that there's more going on than just how do we stop the freezing. And I think they just missed the mark on that. But I was really surprised by the ingenuity. It was very, very surprising to me. And it worked, but just follow the whole system. The house is a system. Oh, put more insulation in. No, don't put more insulation in, because then you don't have as much ventilation and then you have more mold. So just things like that. Yeah, so you need, let's talk about the fire triangle. Fire triangle, you need your heat, you need your air, and then you need a fuel source. If you have those three, and I think I put them in the wrong spot, so firefighters, please don't be mad at me. Fire triangle, and now it's like a fire polygon of some sort. I don't know. Anyway, fire triangle. So what we're gonna do with this fire triangle is that we need that fresh air coming in. So what they did was they covered the combustible vents. By covering those combustible vents, what has happened is that they basically, bad things have happened because they cover the combustible vents. That means that now we have to draw air from elsewhere. And because we're drawing air from elsewhere, there's a good chance we could create a backdraft situation, which would allow carbon monoxide to get into the house, which is silent and deadly and doesn't have a smell, doesn't have a taste, nothing. Please have carbon monoxide detectors in your house. Please update the batteries. Please have more than you're supposed to have. Just if it's predictable, it's preventable. Keep your family safe. That's all I have to say. And the reason that they block this is because cold air comes into that space and it creates a draft. It makes it kind of cold and uncomfortable. It's there for a reason. Please, just be understanding. So yeah, this one here, there was no fire barrier. Half of the garage was covered. The other half of the garage was not covered. We just want to make sure that any of those gases or fire, it's all contained, taken care of. This is not how you build a deck. This is not how you anchor a deck. This is not the proper footings for a deck. Just things like that. If your roof is bowing in, or if it has a saddle, or if all the pieces of wood are broken, it's probably a failure of the roof system. This was a failure of the roof system, something to be mindful of. A handrail is supposed to be continuous. Putting a manual connection for plumbing onto 2 pieces of wood to continue that handrail down is not adequate. That is not how it's supposed to be. Put yourself in the mindset of grandpa. And if grandpa walks down there and his hand gets caught and he loses his balance, he's going down the stairs. And that is very, 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 very dangerous. So next, water doesn't go uphill. So that's bad. Next, if you put a rag with a 5-pound weight on top of it, the 5-pound weight, as it turns out, is inadequate. And that is not a good cap to prevent sewer gases from coming back into the house. Love what they did here. So they wanted to make sure that snow doesn't come into the window well. Awesome. But they built it so robustly that even me, as the world's strongest man, could probably not push that off, especially if there was a snow load on it. And so we want to make sure that if we have a window well and we need to be able to get out in case of a fire, that put yourself in the mindset, 6-year-old kid should be able to open the window, remove that window well cover, and get to safety. So that's what we're looking for. Next thing, range and oven past design life. This thing was old and I did not test it because if I turn on the oven and the insulation around the oven is not adequate enough, and then I overly heat the surrounding space and I catch the house on fire, I will feel embarrassed. And so my recommendation is don't use it. Get them to replace it. I mean, they've had it long enough. They should have replaced it years ago. So a lot of times we have people that have wells and the well head comes out and then the snowplow comes and hits the wellhead and people don't have water and they wonder, why don't I have any water? It's because the snowplow just totally destroyed it. And that is expensive. It is extremely expensive. So all you have to do is put up an actual physical barrier that you feel confident enough that it would stop a snowplow. As long as it can do that, then it's a good barrier. If it can't do that, it's not a good barrier. So plumbing sink, lots of moisture deterioration underneath the sink. It could have been an old issue, could be a new issue. Elevators. Okay, I just want to say sorry. I'm first going to say sorry. The sign said, do not use elevator. Elevator works perfectly. The sign did not say, do not use elevator. You really have to close the door and then put a little extra English into it to make sure that the door is actually closed. And then the elevator works properly, which actually means that the elevator doesn't work properly because the door does not work or operate as intended by the manufacturer. You have to kind of, just do a little extra. And that's not a part of the way that it's supposed to be. So yeah, there was a sign that said, do not use, it works properly. I'm an inspector. If the sign says do not use because it's broken, I will take a picture of the sign and I will not use it. But because it said it works perfectly fine, we found out it doesn't work perfectly fine. Still sorry, but just so you guys know on the interwebs, the solution was unlock, which I didn't have the key, unlock the main door to do basically a forced entry into that elevator space, open up the gate, close the gate again, jiggle it to get the sensor, and then you are good to go. So they just need to make an adjustment to the latching and the sensor placement, and then they're good to go. Still feel bad about it. All right, moving on. Stairs. All of these stairs. Every stair I go down, I always end up cutting my finger or something because these stairs that are screwed together always fall apart. Just be very mindful because you just need to be safe. Here's the deal. Water and electricity, not friends. They can intermingle dangerously, but they are not friends. So pretty please don't put like main water supply lines that can have condensation and other things like that near the actual main wiring coming in for the house or outlets that are not GFCI protected as well. Just be smart when you're building a house. That's all there is to it. These stairs, this is not a skewed or stretched photo. These stairs were basically a ladder leaning back is what these stairs were. Put yourself in the mindset. Grandpa, not safe. Don't do it. All right, so coming down, utility boxes. Normally the utility boxes need to be corrected by the utility company because it is unlawful to open those boxes. I'm not going to say unlawful, but you are not supposed to because people have stolen cable in the past, have stolen telephone in the past, have done all these things. So they just say you are not allowed to interact with those utility boxes. Just call the utility company. You're good to go. So inadequate drainage. Yeah, so basically you need to have a drip pan, and that's one thing. And then you need to make sure that that water has somewhere to go. And a lot of times they'll have a drip pan that goes nowhere, and that's not good either. So then heating, leak active. So yeah, there was an active leak in the heating system. And that is just not ideal. I mean, it's pretty much as straightforward as it goes right there. So next thing, this block here, you could just rotate it with your hand. There's a video, and we always have videos for certain things in our reports. You can just rotate it by hand. It's not supporting anything. If it got moved out of the way, if Jimmy was running by and kicked it by accident, the structure fails or can fail. So just not great. Don't put hot tubs on things that aren't supposed to have hot tubs. Hot tubs are crazy heavy. We're talking tons of weight. And if the deck is not designed for it, the deck will fail. This deck failed. Luckily, it was on the ground, so it failed further onto the ground, which isn't that big of a deal, but it's not ideal. So there should be a clean out whenever you have drainage pipe. We hate pulling off toilets, but we pull off toilets to run the sewers, to run the snake. But basically there needs to be a clean out because sometimes you need to have a different piece of equipment that isn't necessarily as flexible as our snake is with the camera on it, our sewer scope. So, you know, just if you see that, just ask a plumber, hey, what would it cost to cut, glue, place together? What would it cost to do that? Just, it'll help you out in the long run. Because if you have a backup, you need to get to it. So we try to test everything. We did not test this shower. Why did we not test this shower? Well, if you look at it, the controls are all the way in the back, and there are more spray nozzles than any other shower that we've been to. You basically like shut yourself into it, and then you turn it on, which I think would be uncomfortable because the first little bit of water would be a little cold, but whatever. So many nozzles, didn't test it, and said we didn't test it as well. So then basically don't use extension cords for things that should not have extension cords on them. Get a professional to work inside of your electrical panel. If not, who knows if it's being done right. And again, electricity, it can kill you. So, oh my gosh, yeah, this one. Like homemade, everything homemade. Why? Vertical post, no longer vertical, not nailed in, not screwed in. Don't screw things in. Screws will shear, and that's bad. Nails will bend and bend and bend and bend, and then it'll fail. So that way you have more time to realize what is failing. But yeah, this was not good. You can tell by the red that it's not good. So then this one, mouse droppings, excessive. This one was pretty excessive. We had one where we opened it up and it was just mouse poop everywhere. And this is during COVID, so you're wearing a mask and the mouse poop goes into your mask, and then your brain says at the very beginning of this video, hantavirus. Anyway, you just take a bath with hand sanitizer and you're good to go, right? So anyway, mouse droppings, not a fan. So this particular water heater, you had to like destroy a part of the wall just to be able to get to it to do any kind of service work. Replacing it, good luck. Just not going to happen. So then you move yourself through. Basically, think of yourself as a water droplet. If I come down and this is the water hitting, then we want the next piece to be here, so it goes down. The next piece to be here, so it goes down. The next piece to be here, so it goes down, so it goes down, so it goes down. This one was wall opening. All the rain could go into the opening. Not great. So we want to get that siding fixed. Most definitely. So yeah, basically wires located too close to drain. I mean, it's pretty clear, but these wires, again, leaky drain, leaky drain, electrical wires, this, that, the other. You just, if it's predictable, it's preventable. What if one of those wires gets frayed? What if one of the wires gets nicked? What if whatever? It's just not ideal. But anyway, thank you if you made it this far. I doubt most people would have, but if you did, thank you. So what we have going on, like I said, is that this was the October 2020 in-service training. I didn't record any of the other trainings. We didn't even have great documentation. It was mostly just phone calls and texts and whatever. But now we're going to be moving forward with appropriate training for what we come across in addition to our continuing education credits. And the main thing is I just wanted to make sure that I have a record of the training that I'm providing to my employees. And of course, we go into a lot of detail about the certain, aspects of each part of this, and we read through all the different narratives and we talk about stuff. And we take the whole families out to dinner whenever that's acceptable to do in the locations that we're in. And then that way everybody kind of has something to look forward to at the end of the month. But anyway, thank you so much. I'm again John with Two Moose Home Inspections, and if you have any questions or if you'd like to schedule a home inspection, please visit twomoosehomeinspections.com. If you click on Schedule an Inspection, the second page will show you our availability, and then moving forward from there, the last page shows you the pricing for everything that we offer. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.